Hi, my name's Paul Cresswell. Welcome to Paul's Tackle Reviews. The purpose of this channel is to give you real life reviews of tackle that's been out on the bank, tried and tested by an unsponsored, unbiased angler, and that's me. As I say with all of my videos, just because something works for me doesn't mean it's going to work for you, but I'll try and give you all the information so you can make up your own mind. You might wonder why I'm sat here. It's because I tend to use this space here for putting photos and details up so that you can get all the information. Today I'm looking at a rod I've recently purchased. It's the Preston Innovations Ascension. It's a 3.4 metre rod. In old money, that's 11 foot 4 inches, and its stated casting weight is 40 grams. So I have a silvers rod that I use for feeder fishing, and that's a Matrix XS Slim 10 foot 10 rod. And it's been a fantastic little rod, great for short little chucks, very sensitive, a nice through action, great for not pulling out of those silverfish. I fished the Gloucester Canal and it's 25 kind of meters wide, and I use my Matrix, but I've struggled a bit because it's quite soft rod. Casting accuracy is difficult. It doesn't really have any punch in the middle to get things out, and I wanted a rod where I could improve my accuracy but still retain all the fish playing action that you need for silverfish. Quite often when I'm fishing the canal, I use a biggish bait hook feeder, and with this soft Matrix rod, it kind of loops, and I didn't really have control over where it was going. So I've taken the Preston rod, the Ascension. I watched their promotional videos. There's a particularly good one of Lee Kerry using it, I think, with braid at Barston for silverfish that I thought really gave it a good show. And one of the things I saw in the video was there was an element of stiffness and a very fast taper at the tip of the rod. So you kept all that softness in the tip, but the middle had a little bit more backbone. It's, as you get with all rods now, it's a lovely slim rod. It's got the Duplon reel fitting, part cork, part Duplon handle with a bit of ground bait on there I need to clean off. It's a two-piece rod, great for carrying, so it'll fit in your ready rod holdalls. And the distance from where your real middle stem would go to the butt is around 19 inches. Now, for comparison, my Preston Supera 10 foot method rod, if you like, is 17 inches. So there's a couple more inches on the bottom, but that's because this rod is also a bit more about casting further distances than my other rods. I'm going to put a video up now which hopefully shows the action of the Matrix and then the action of this rod. This rod's 6 inch, 8 inch longer than the Matrix, but I think you can see the difference in the action. And the final third part of this video shows both rods side by side, same setup in terms of line. I'm picking off, I think it's a kind of sweet corn off the ground, and you can see the action in the two rods. I'm hopeful that's shown you what I mean by the action of this rod versus the action of a soft silvers rod. My first day out with this rod, I was on the canal. I was fishing around 20 metres, kind of 5 metres from the far side. I had braid on. I had a 1 metre, 8-pound shock leader, for a better word, mainly with a Drennan cage feeder. I'll go into detail because I think some people like it. I've got an 012 hook length and a Preston N30 hook in a size 16, and I'm fishing maggot, dead maggot, caster and worm, and I tend to find maggots a good way to get a bite. Dead maggot is a bit more selective. The worm can be a bit hit and miss, but I do feed worm regularly when I fish there. And the rod comes with 3 tips, 3/4 ounce, an ounce and an ounce and a half. So I've put the 3/4 ounce tip in the rod, the lightest rod for silver fishing on the canal. First thing I noticed, you could really feel that extra bit of power in the rod. The casting accuracy was much better. It's a venue heavily affected by wind, and you do really need to punch it sometimes to keep it accurate. Being accurate gets more bites, so it's something that I wanted to really improve on. I caught a few very small fish to start, and what I will say is it's got a good feeling to the rod. You can tell when you've got one. You never wind in and think, oh, I've got a fish on the end. You can feel those little judders even on the very small fish. Caught a couple of skimmers, and then an hour into the session I hooked into something big, and I thought, wow, I've got a real proper bream on. Played it carefully. There's weed on the inside margin, so you've got to be careful. And then came to net it, and up popped a 5-pound carp, or thereabouts. Put a photo of that. Couldn't believe it. First time I've had a carp on the Gloucester Canal, and the rod performed brilliantly. It was a bit of an old warrior of a carp. It didn't really look. It had a much broader, and it was quite thick to it. It wasn't like a commercial carp. Absolutely made my day. I went on and I had quite a few skimmers and a couple of bream as well. So my conclusion, and I've been out 4 or 5 times since with it on the canal, is it is a brilliant silvers rod, and I love it for that. Quite often you're catching those 8 ounce to 1.5 pound skimmers, you know, the ones that come off really easy when you go to net. So you need that cushioning, and it's performed brilliantly on that. Having caught the carp and watched what Lee Kerry was saying about the rod, how it would handle bonus fish, I thought to myself, I'll give this a go, and I'll take it method feeder fishing on my local club pond. I've got a video here coming up, and I'm going to show me fishing the method feeder. So I've got an ICS method, 20 gram micros. I'm using one of the Sonobait's micro wafters, which I think are excellent. My main line is 8-pound Horizon, which is my standard for feeder fishing on commercials. I've got a 2-inch hook length. That's something I'm trying this year, and I'm really getting positive results with that. A 16 kkmb Preston hook with a small bait band on it. Now for this I put the 1.5 ounce tip in, because I thought if I tried the softest tip and try the heaviest, I've got a good overall feel for the rod. So I'm going to put a little bit of me catching with this rod. I hope you found that interesting. What I will say is, using this for the method, it works perfectly well, but I'm not getting rid of my Supera because that is the perfect rod for it. The 10-foot length, that extra power, this has more softness in it, but it did a brilliant job on those carp up to 4 or 5 pound that I was catching on that day. The only other thing I found with it, because it's slightly longer, the fish were coming out a little bit further out when I was netting them, which is something you need to think about as well. And the handle being slightly longer, I could feel it because I'm really used to using my Supera for that kind of thing. So I'm not ditching the Supera, but what it did make me think was this is going to be a brilliant rod for winter carp fishing, probably with the 1 ounce tip. So it might be light method feeder work, it might be maggot feeder. It's got a great action in winter. The fish don't fight as hard. You need to be more cushioning, and I'm certainly going to try that over the winter. So what's my overall conclusions of this rod? The first thing to say is it isn't a jack of all trades and it does a bit of everything, but it isn't good at any one of them. It is a brilliant silvers rod and I absolutely love it for silvers fishing, especially on the canal. It's very easy to cast with because it has that bit of power further down. It's not too soft. It's got a 40 gram weight rating. I put a 30 gram method, loaded it and cast it as far as I could, and it was brilliant. It went well over 55 turns on the reel, so it's 50 meters. I would say 50 meters is about as far as you're going to go. You might get 60 with this rod, but it's also great at 20 meters. It's got all that flexibility. £100, it's an absolute bargain, and I kind of think, Preston's, what you're doing here, because are people going to pay for the SL? I've never used the SL Supera, that's around 170 quid, but for silvers this is a fantastic rod. There are other lengths in the range. There's a 10-foot 8, I think it is, a slightly shorter rod, which I'm sure is great. And there's a 12-foot and a 13-foot rod as well. But this one is a brilliant all-rounder. And if you're maybe a pleasure angler, you don't want to carry loads of rods around with you, but you might do a bit of silvers fishing, you might do a bit of carp fishing. This is as close as you can get to a catch-all feeder rod up to 50 meters. Now, I wouldn't want to use it for a session where I'm targeting 8 to 10 pound carp and that's the norm. But if you're doing carp up to 5 pound and an odd bigger one comes up, that's fine. It'll take you slightly longer to get it in, but it's certainly well capable of doing that. I don't think if you use this for everything, you're making a big compromise on any part of it. To be honest, if you own this and the Supera, as I do, you've covered an awful lot of bases up to and around the 50 metre region for all sizes of fish. I hope you found that interesting. I think it's a great rod. Rods nowadays are unbelievable value. I was out the other day, there was a guy with a 50 quid Preston Ignition 10-foot method rod, and it was fantastic. And I think even the 50 pound ranges, this is the 100, you can get into the 200s and you're getting marginal improvements, but cheaper rods are fantastic. I wouldn't say this was a budget choice. I personally think Preston's have underpriced it. It's a fantastic rod for the money. That's it for today. I've got getting on for 50 videos, believe it or not, on my YouTube channel. I've got lots of subscribers. If you want to subscribe, you'll get automatically notified of future videos. If you want to give me a like, that's great. If you want to put a comment or a question in the section below, that's great. I always check every couple of days at least and get back to people when they ask questions or they make comments. Until next time, tight lines.